So my name's Sarah Jewett, and I direct learning partnerships at UMBC, which is the University of Maryland. And we are enjoying, as we were talking about, some lovely fall weather and starting to see the leaves changing. And I will be one of the co-hosts along with, and I'll pass it to you, Mbalo.
My name's Mbalu. My pronouns are she, her, and I also work at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. This is my first time attending and also, facilitating slash co-hosting a conference. And I'm really just so excited to hear your stories. Any chance I get to hear people's stories, I am there. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here.
Excellent, thanks. And we were very lucky at UMBC to co-host the conference in person a couple of years ago, and that was great fun. So can we have the speakers just introduce themselves really quickly, your name, where you're calling from, and if this is your first time or you're a seasoned storytelling conference goer, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the presentations. Effie, why don't you go ahead and get started?
So, hello from Thessaloniki, Greece. My name is Efi. Full name is Efthymia. That also means joy, and in Greek. And I'm very glad to be here. It's my first time in the Story Center digital storytelling conference online, but I have participated in last year's digital storytelling festival in Zakynthos. So my digital story is called Bear With Me. It has to do with my volunteering experience in Arcturus organization, that is organization preserving nature and bears and wolves and wildlife in the northern Greece, and does a lot of work in the Balkans as well. And so it's a story about the brown bears in Europe in general, and it's about all of us who work to protect nature and a healthy human development. So it's a digital story of about 8 minutes, and I will be glad to share it with you.
Great, thank you. Chitali.
I'm originally from India. I was born and raised there, and I moved to the UK, and currently I'm in Germany, Frankfurt. It's about 10 to 3 here. It's also sort of autumn, getting colder, but also, as we described, rather first, about, I think, a minimum of 6 degrees today morning. So here in Celsius, I guess you talk about weather in Fahrenheit. So I have no idea what that in Fahrenheit is, but here it was 6 degrees in the morning, right now maybe about 8 degrees, 10 degrees, something like that. I'm at Frankfurt University of Applied Sciences. I'm a social worker. I teach at the University of Applied Sciences, and I've just got a story from the Indian context to kind of pick up some things about the environment and agency and how we engage with it.
Awesome, thank you. And then Kara.
Hello, so my name is Hara. I'm a teacher, kindergarten right now. I'm an English teacher, and right now I will start my PhD in the University of Athens with Professor Michalis Mimaris. It's going to be about digital storytelling and education. It's my first time in the conference, and really glad to be here. I'm only here as a representative of a story. It's not my story, I will show you, but it is truly worth to watch it. And the creator could not be here, so I'm just gonna show you. We're gonna talk about it. I think it's a story that whenever I watch it, I'm in tears, and it's really personal. So
excellent. Thank you for coming as a representative. And we'll talk a little bit about the presentations, and then we'll just jump right in so we can hear them. Trisha, do you want to introduce yourself really quickly?
Yeah, my name is Trisha. I'm from Chicago, and I last minute joined. This is the first time attending the full conference. I attended one of the storytelling workshops last year and love it. And I work for Advocate Health, a large healthcare organization, and I do a lot of instructional design. I'm also a clinician, so the digital storytelling space for medicine and healthcare is of interest to me.
Great.
And I'm excited to be here today because I'm currently working on a sustainability project with the team at Advocate. So I am going to probably take all the climate health courses today and get inspiration for our project. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. So let me tell you a little bit about the way the session will be organized. A warm welcome to all of you. We're excited about the session. Each of you will have about 15 minutes, and then we'll have some time for questions and discussion at the end. Mbalo will be recording when each of you start to present. If there's some part of the recording that you don't want to have recorded, then please let us know ahead of time so that Mbalo can pause the recording for that. The recording, it will be happening throughout the session again, unless somebody wants us to pause it at some moment. To keep us on schedule, we'll be using a timer. And please let us know how you want to know when 3 minutes are here. So either put up a, let us, Mbalu can put up a 3, or she can get off the mic and let you know when there's a 3. I think it's easier to do this so we don't interrupt the flow. Does that work for everybody? Okay, awesome. Please please hold your questions. You can put them in the chat, or you can unmic. I don't think there's any reason for us to use the chat given that there's a small number of us. So why don't we hold our questions and then engage in a discussion at the end. Again, if you'd prefer not to be in the audio, the video, please turn off your camera. But otherwise, we would love to have you as part of the conversation. And welcome, Peter. We're glad you're able to join this session. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. And Chitali, if you could provide your presentation on the Earth's Vengeance Extraction Agency and Consequence and Story of Karna. We are very excited to hear your story, so please. And you'll see the 3 in about 12 minutes.
Okay. Can you see my presentation as a full screen? Okay, so I'll tell you a bit of what the story is about and what it is. I probably introduce myself a little bit. I'm a social worker. I teach social work. My research interests are international and transnational social work. And I'm in Germany at the moment. And what I want to do in this presentation, I have about 8 slides, in case you're wondering how many more to go. This is basically what I want to do with an outline. I want to tell you what this story is, because it's embedded in a bigger poem. It's an epic in the Indian context. I don't know if you've heard of the Mahabharata. I don't know if anybody has heard of it or is familiar with it. It's one of these epic stories in the Indian subcontinent. Almost everybody would know it, even though we've probably never read the book ourselves or read the poem ourselves. It's written in the old Sanskrit. But as I said, this is a defining story for Hindus in terms of good and bad and the ambiguity and the complexities of life. And then
I'm going to interrupt just for a tiny second. We're having a little bit of trouble hearing you with sort of an echo. Can you move a little bit closer or try it again?
Is this better? No?
I think let's have the group. Does that sound better to you?
Oh, yes, no. Okay.
It's hard to tell since you aren't speaking.
Yeah.
I can try to, I don't know what I should try to do, but maybe I'll just continue and then we can just, otherwise we'll lose time.
Yeah.
And
I turned on the captions, so that'll help a little bit.
Okay. And then I'll tell you the story and then how I used the story, or I have used the story in my teaching. That's essentially the idea in a nutshell. As I said, it's one of the longest poems. It was written between the 3rd BCE and 3rd CE. The author of this entire huge complex story of the Mahabharata is Vyasa, and it has multiple stories in this big story. So there is a lot of going back in the past and what will happen in the future, and knowing that, and events that unfold, and characters that appear and reappear, and every character is then looked at differently at different points of time. So it's sort of it's that kind of story, and I'm picking a very, very small, almost insignificant part of the narrative, which then becomes significant at the very end. So this piece of story that I'm about to say, and you'll also realize while I tell it, it happens sometime in this character's life, but has meaning, but is not really realized at that point in time. It only comes back to haunt the character later in the final climax. There are two key characters in the story that I'm about to tell you. One is Karna, which is this person on the left of the screen. And Karna is is an ambivalent character. He is born out of wedlock. He is the son of the sun god, and literally the sun god, because in Hindu mythology we have lots of elements of nature that we regard as gods and goddesses. So he was born of the sun god and a human mortal, Kunti. But Kunti didn't want him because she was not married at the time. So she had abandoned him. And then he grew up in a fisherman's home. And essentially he was born in a warrior in a kingly family, but was never really given the privileges that such a warrior or person from such a kingly family normally would have. In the development of this character, there's a lot of complexities about human desire, generosity, loyalty, ambition, and drive, but also how society treats people unequally or neglects them or kind of creates hierarchies that are then disappointing to characters. So that is sort of what Karna's character is. He's extremely generous. And if you had ever asked Karna to give you something, he would never say no. He will always give you whatever he had to the extent that he could help. And then the other character is Bhumi Devi, which is Goddess Earth. And she is normally a central figure in Hindu mythology. So she would appear even beyond or in other stories beyond the Mahabharata. Whereas Karna is only specific to this Mahabharata story. And she's often portrayed as a goddess that is oppressed by evil forces, by demons, or by corrupt rulers. And I'll get into the story now. So the story goes that Karna was hanging around in his village. He was coming back from somewhere, going someplace. And on the way, he meets this woman who is crying. And he asks her why she's crying and whether he can help her. And the woman goes like, I was carrying this pot of milk and I dropped it and the earth has sucked it up. Obviously, it's no longer there. And I do not know how I'm going to feed my child. This was for my child, it was important. And Karna feels very bad for this woman and he wants to help her. So he picks up the earth where the milk had been spilled and squeezes with all the force that he has to then extract the milk back from it. So in that sense, he's able to get the milk back, and then he gives it to the woman who was upset. And the woman thanks him. She's very grateful, and she moves on. But after that, Bhumi Devi, which is Goddess Earth, is really, really angry with him. And she's like, how dare you? How dare you, violently take this out of me and do as you please. And she wants revenge. She's angry, she's upset, and she curses Karna. And Karna eventually needed 3 curses to finally lose in the final main battle in this bigger story of the Mahabharata, which is this Kurukshetra. So that's the name of the war. It's an 18-day war. So Karna can't do anything about it. He accepts the curse and then moves on his life, and then he becomes a king later on and gets involved in this big war of the Mahabharata. And what happens is that in the Kurukshetra, which is an 18-day war, on the 17th day, Karna is fighting his brother. And Karna was always on the wrong side of this war. He was on the losing side of this war. This is the penultimate day, and he's fighting his brother, who's also a very, very accomplished warrior. And during the war, he needs these 3 curses, and all get realized for him to lose. And one of the curses is from Bhumi Devi, from Goddess Earth, that his chariot gets stuck in the mud. So Mother Earth holds onto this wheel and she won't let go. And he is then trying to get his wheel out of this of the earth. He's helpless and he can't fight, and he's become immobile. And that was the point where Arjun is then able to kill him. And that's how the story ends. That's it. And for me, why the story is interesting is because I think it opens a number of different themes for discussion. And these are the questions that I think are quite interesting to look at. One is a question of agency. So, for example, when I asked this when I narrated the story in Germany, a lot of my colleagues and also students were like, who can have agency? Can we imagine other beings, other things, inanimate objects, or other beings apart from humans as having agency? And I find it quite interesting the way this goddess Earth is represented in the story as having agency, as somebody who feels angry and or who is also able to express it, and somebody whose feelings. And this was also quite interesting in terms of how do we see this as a powerful being, but also powerful beings who are then exploited or kind of, violently dealt with. And then the idea is, can they feel? And if they can feel, could we, and if they have agency and we can talk to them and they can feel things, then could we have talked to Mother Earth? Can we then talk to her? And if we can talk to her, would she listen to us? Would we be able to listen to her? And what kind of dialogue would we be having? And I think it's quite interesting to think about it in terms of, but this is what a lot of people in different communities believed, and they still talk to these beings, but be it prayer, be it ritual. But I think those are all kind of attempts to have a conversation, to understand and to communicate. The other questions that then come up is, could Karna have prevented the curse? What would have happened if he didn't extract the myth, or if he did something else? Eventually, would this have happened anyway? Because for the story to continue, some things were bound to happen. So if it didn't happen like this, it would have happened some other way. And in that sense, it brings up this idea of whether we have choice, or would some things happen anyway? And then the idea about how do we exercise our agency? What agency do we have then? So if things are going to happen anyway, irrespective, should we then do something or not? And I think this is also quite interesting in talking about environmental, consequences and agency. So if something is happening and if we know that it is wrong, and we know that we do not have as much control, does it mean that we have no control? Should we exercise our agency, even though what the consequences would be are not clear, or maybe would not have any impact? And I think that is quite interesting to also think about. What is our role in showing our agency or doing something if we cannot always control the outcome? For me, it's also about, the moral implications of making those choices. Another interesting discussion point that often comes up is to talk about, could he have undone his decision? Was there a possibility to apologize to Bhumi Devi and undo the curse? In what directions could the story have moved if it wasn't just so linear, in this narrative? And then I go back to thinking about, what are the parallels with the story and what we experience in terms of just extractionism, how we treat natural resources, how we treat, whether it's Mother Goddess or Earth, as a resource that we seek to exploit, and whether this has consequences, because in some ways it's almost as if the Earth is seeking her vengeance. There's cause and there's consequence, and for all the exploitation and extractivism. And this is also so telling in the way Karna extracts the milk from Mother Earth, and that she comes back and gets her revenge in that sense. Maybe revenge is not even the right word. Maybe it's just a way of describing how we imagine one would feel. And finally, I was imagining, as I said, whether we can reimagine the story and change the consequences and tell it differently, and what can we take away from it. And I think that's basically it. For us, as I said, the story is it's an oral tradition. So even though it's written, I have never read this story, and I have never studied it in schools. This was just something that many of us, almost all of us, who knows about the Mahabharata, and many of us would know it. And I think the details also changed. If there was another storyteller, the details of this story would change. Maybe it wouldn't be milk, maybe it would be butter, or it could be something else that dropped. Maybe it wasn't for her son, maybe it was for somebody else. Maybe the reaction at Mother Earth was different. And I think that also leaves a lot of space to tell these stories differently. And I think that is also something that is very, very precious in the oral tradition, to make these stories your own. And with that, I'm finished. Thank you for the heads up as well, but that's it.
Thank you so much. I think that this we are in a moment where the idea of reimagining is even more important, right? And so that last one really resonated with me. I appreciate that and look forward to having a conversation about it afterwards. Thank you again. So our next speaker is Effie, who will be delivering a presentation called Bear With Me. And we're really excited to hear your story and presentation. So we'll turn it over to you and restart the timer.
Great. So I will start sharing and then we can talk about it. Bear with me. So let's start. Do you see my screen? Yeah. Okay.
We can't hear it though if there's audio, so make sure you check share with sound.
One moment then. Do you know how to do this?
Yes, so perhaps if you stop sharing your screen and then try resharing it again. On the right side, you'll see a little box and you can click share sound before you officially share it again. Should be a little box that you can click that says share sound.
There are 4 blocks. It says content only as background of the shoulder, side by side, share sound. Yes. All right. Great.
Share sound.
That's the magic button.
Works?
Yes, we can hear sound now.
Bears love apples. Red or green, preferably ripe and sweet. Little bears love to play.
So unfortunately, we don't see the pictures now.
What do you see?
I am seeing the video.
Me too.
I can put the video for.
Sarah, you're muted.
Go ahead then and proceed. It's must be something with mine.
All right.
Thank you.
Goodness. Or in the water. Bears love swimming and scratching their backs with their strong paws while enjoying autumn days before their winter sleep. From the Central Alps to the Dinaric Alps down to Greece, the brown bear population is one of the most substantial in Europe. Being at the highest layers of the species pyramid, bears are key regulators of their ecosystems and vital for their biodiversity. Yet the brown bear is one of the most difficult species to manage, not only due to its remote, reclusive nature, but mostly because their range spans 10 different European countries. In Greece, brown bears are found in two main populations, one in the mountainous landscape of Pindus and the other in the Rhodope mountain range. In human-modified areas, maintaining gene flow between these populations is crucial for their viability and survival. Bears love to scratch their backs at electricity poles, marking their territory. In our continually changing world. And sometimes bears are found dead, poisoned near human estates. Lying in the forest, hit by passing vehicles on mountain roads. How many of the injured bears will survive? How many orphan bears will survive after losing their mother? And how do they find food in a world full of concrete mountains? Transportation infrastructure creates barriers throughout life movement, disconnecting populations and increasing extinction risk. Road accidents, human traps, poisoning, hunting are human-caused factors affecting the population. But movement between areas is essential to find food, water, and new habitats to maintain genetic diversity. This remoteness is necessary not only on a local but also on a national and international level to ensure their survival and reproduction. How can we design climate-resilient coexisting bridges that minimize conflicts, remove anthropogenic barriers, and act as catalysts for reversing the species' decline, aiding its gradual recovery? The long-term survival of Europe's brown bears depends on effective conservation policies and ecological management. When we reduce anthropogenic pressures, reconnect fragmented habitats, and help populations recover, we protect not only their future, but also the balance of the ecosystems they sustain. But survival is not enough. Well-being is what we need to fight for wildlife, for all.
So, if you allow me, I just want to say a few words. It's the video ends with a question: how can we build these coexisting bridges? And this is a question. It's not rhetoric. It's the work. It's the work we need to do, and an urgency first to care, and then to act and to make plans and bring the change worldwide. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. That was such a powerful story, and raises a lot of such important questions at the end. We use words like balance, and then we need to think about, how does that affect us collectively, but also our accountability individually. So thank you for raising those questions. I love the conversations that I'm already imagining. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hara, our last but not least presenter, we look forward to hearing your story on mobilizing intergenerational knowledge for climate resilience. So please, we will reset the timer, and we look forward to your story.
So, to guide us in this theme of migration and memory, we will reflect on the digital story, The Crossing. It's a story by Efis Kepetara, a story that got awarded in the International Digital Storytelling Festival at Zakynthos last year. It's a story that captures the complex realities of migration. So let's watch it, and then I'll be back with the presentation and comments. So let me share it. It's in Greek. However, there are subtitles. So I hope we'll enjoy it. Can you watch my screen? Okay.
Υπήρχε κάποτε ένα σταυροδρόμι λαών με πολιτισμό πανάρχαιο, με παραλίες που γέννησαν τον Ηρόδοτο και τον Ηράκλειτο, με μουσικές μοναδικές, με αρώματα Ανατολής και Δύσης. Όλα αυτά γίναν στάχτες στις φλόγες του 1922. Αλλά το ερώτημα σκέει ακόμα. Τι άραγε άφησε στη δική μας ψυχή εκείνη η φωτιά. Είναι απλώς ένα ακόμα κεφάλαιο στην ελληνική ιστοριογραφία ή μια μελανή σελίδα του ελληνισμού που όμως πέρασε και πάει. Η αλήθεια είναι πως για μένα το 1922 έγινε μια πραγματικότητα για πρώτη φορά το 2015. Τότε είδα στο νησί μου να καταφθάνουν βάρκες με στιβαγμένες ψυχές που μικρή διαφορά είχαν από εκείνες τις βάρκες του τότε. Είδα ανθρώπους να κλαίνουν από απελπισία και χαρά που πάτησαν το πόδι τους στην κόλαση, αλλά είναι τουλάχιστον ακόμα ζωντανοί. Και μανάδες, όπως και τότε, να σφίγγουν αγκαλιά τα παιδιά τους γιατί ήταν το μόνο που τους είχε απομείνει. Και καινούργιες πορείες ανθρώπων να σχηματίζονται στο δρόμο και κάποιο hot spot. Είδα τους δυνατούς να παίζουν πάλι παιχνίδι σε βάρος των αθώων και είδα τον θάνατο διαχρονικά ίδιο, μόλις 10 μίλια ανατολικότερα, στις τουριστικές παραλίες που κάποτε απολαμβάναμε ξέχμιαστη τον ήλιο. Είδα πολλά τα τελευταία χρόνια που μου ξεκαθάρισαν τι θα μπει η εικόνα του 22. Εδώ, σε αυτή τη γωνιά του Αιγαίου, που συνορεύει τόσο στενά με την Ανατολή, άκουσα ξανά τα ουρλιαχτά του προγόνου μου να πέφτουν στη θάλασσα, αναζητώντας μια ευκαιρία να περάσουν ζωντανοί στη δική τους γη της επαγγελίας. Τι σημαίνει για μένα το 22? Σημαίνει την αμήχανη ζωή μου, δίπλα σε ανθρώπους που αγωνίζονται για να ξαναχτίσουν τη δική τους. Το χαμόγελο της Αϊσέ, το κουράγιο του Αχμέτ, τα λαμπερά μάτια της Αχάρ και της Λάμνα δηλώνουν πως το όνειρο και η ελπίδα δεν έσβησαν ακόμα. Και έτσι, όπως βρήκαν χώρο να ανθίσουν, τα όνειρα του Σεφέρι, του Κόντογλου, του Τούντα και τόσων άλλων θα βρεθούν πάλι καινούργιοι τόποι να ριζώσουν οι νέοι καλλιτέχνες του αύριο.
Okay, and now I will share the presentation with you. Um, Okay, so I'd like to start with what strikes me the most about the story, and it is a quote from the creator, Efis herself. For the first time, I realized that displacement does not belong to the past. It keeps repeating itself. And I think in that statement, there's something very powerful. It's a recognition that the personal experience of witnessing displacement opens up to something political and maybe structural. I think through her personal lens, through this digital storytelling, Efis helps us see how the same forces of war, politics, inequality, and now climate change continue to push people away from their homes. So the crossing can become more than a memory. It can become a mirror of how history lives in the present. And I think in this realization also lies a deeper truth that displacement is never only personal, nor only historical. It is where the personal and the political converge, where lived experience exposes the recurring structures of power, of exclusion, and survival. And then comes the haunting, for me, question of the story. What did that flame leave on our souls? I think that flame was literal, and now it's metaphorical. It's the memory of loss, of exile, that passes from one generation to the next. So in many ways, this question invites us, I think Efiskabadara invites us to think about generational trauma, about how the memory of displacement does not simply fade away, but it lingers maybe in our collective consciousness. And maybe it urges us to remember and maybe even to act. So today, as new forms of immigration emerge, that same flame, as the creator implies, challenges us. What will we do with the memory we carry? And I dare to further that question. Will it consume us, that flame in repetition, or will it become a light that guides us, that guides our response, and a reminder of our shared responsibility to those crossing again? The story and that question leads us to the themes and symbolisms we find in the story. Firstly, memory. As the story reminds us that loss and immigration is not just the past, but it's not a distant archive, let's say, but by weaving together archival images with contemporary footage, the creator shows how remembrance can illuminate our present challenges and that past can speak through the faces and voices of today, of those who cross again today. Secondly, we see integration. The creator addresses that matter as not just a smooth process, but as a dynamic interaction and encounter. As when displaced people and the host communities meet, they reshape one another. New identities and hybrid cultures may emerge, and surely both groups are transformed. So maybe in the end, immigration is not only about loss, but it's also about renewal. And finally, at the heart of it all is empathy. And I think this digital story shows and allows us to step into another person's world, to dissolve the distance between the other, the foreign, and ourselves. It's an intimate first person narrative, and the story turns statistics and political decisions into faces, global issues into lived experiences. So again, when we ask what the flame has left on our souls, perhaps part of the answer is it has left the capacity to remember, to connect, and to care. So, of course, what makes The Crossing, this digital story, really powerful, I think, as an educator myself, as a teacher, I think it's educational value, how it turns memory into a learning experience. It uses past to build empathy. It can spark critical discussions with our students, reflection on who we are and how we respond to displacement today. And it draws on multiple disciplines: history, language, media, and art. So it can become an interdisciplinary space where different forms of knowledge meet. And ultimately, it nurtures our intercultural understanding. It's not only about learning, but also about feeling alongside others. So now we'll pass into the climate migration, because when we talk about it, it's not a distant possibility. It's already happening, right? There are many surveys you can find. I've referenced some here. Globally, here in Greece, the effects are tangible. Even Greek citizens fear that they are going to have to immigrate. So it's not just a foreign problem. It has become our own issue as well. So I'm going to move on and tell you also that I think climate migration is not just an environmental story, as Efiskabadara has implied in her digital story. It's also political an economic issue. And I think in this sense, climate migration becomes the visible trace of a deeper imbalance, where ecological, economic, ethical forces meet. And I wanted to show how it's also a narrative issue, because the stories we tell, or the stories we fail to tell, will shape how societies respond to those displaced by drought, floods, and rising seas. And storytelling allows us to remember those who crossed before, but also it allows us to imagine the crosses yet to come. In that sense, every story of displacement becomes a lesson. And it's not a lesson not only about nostalgia, but a preparation for the future. And I would like to end this digital storytelling journey with a reflection on the power of stories to cross borders, languages, and hearts by some people, Zebek Abachi, Insan Simsek Burju. I don't know if I'm correcting the names right, but what they had to tell when they watched the story is really important, and I want to quote that. Was it only a story told by a woman from Greece, or was it our collective story that we watched, heard, and felt deep inside? For those of us coming from the other shore of the Aegean Sea, it was our story. At the end of the story, we found ourselves singing along in our language, Turkish, to the song performed in Greek. So we see how this digital story, it's a personal story, but it's also a collective one. And personally, as I watched the story, I couldn't but think of the story in Gaza, in Palestine, the forced migration they have endured, the pain we watch every day in our screens, and the stories we read, the stories we watched. So I think it is our duty to keep listening, keep sharing, and keep finding these universal and collective notes in each narrative. To carry forward with the spirit of empathy and yes, and that's it. Thank you very much. I don't know if maybe the creator is in the is here with us. No, it's okay.
Thank you so much for representing that story so powerfully. We really appreciate that. And I think this question of, do we let flames consume us or light the path forward is just such a compelling way to think about all these reimaginings that are sort of a theme through all the stories. We are fortunate because we do have our 15 minutes. That was our 3 presentations for today. So we do have about 15 minutes to just open up the discussion and be able to respond to each other's stories and ask questions of each other and the stories. And I love that this group of 3 stories was such a diverse representation of from historical to ecological and conservation to sort of thinking about the stories, the cultural stories. And so we have a really nice opportunity to think across these stories. So I just want to start by opening it up to folks to, what resonated with you? What were you captivated by? What did you think about?
I thought the last story, how your story was really, really interesting. And I feel like I literally had tears in my eyes as well, as you said. It was always emotional for you. And I could really imagine, the migration of so many people and what that feels like and how violent this is. And even though we've seen it before, we keep seeing it again. And then at the same time, I was thinking about it, who is allowed to cross the shores, who is not, for whom do we have empathy and for whom do we not. And then along the same line, there's also thinking about, the story with the bear with me, and I think the images like sort of what I was thinking about. And I remember my father telling me, Chitali, nowadays in India, because he lives in India, like nowadays there are people who don't have food to eat, but people would rather feed dogs than humans. and it was very painful for me to hear that when he first said it, but I was just thinking the idea very much is, we have to take care of humans first, and there are human suffering. And I think it's also similar to this idea of it, the survival of the bears. Of course, it also is related to our own survival, but at the same time, how do we get out of this way of thinking about that it is our survival that we're talking about and not just the bears? And because there's always this conflict or dichotomized conflict. I don't even know if it's a real conflict, but presented as a dichotomized conflict that's either them versus us. And I think that was what I was thinking about it as I was like thinking about both these stories in terms of the hierarchies that we create in terms of who gets to be seen, who gets to be protected. And I loved your idea. It wasn't just about survival, but about well-being. And I thought that was so nice. That was so ambitious and nice to not, for a change, talk about survival, but really, no, well-being for everyone, because the planet can provide for everyone, So this was what my being was resonating in your presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for the feedback. It's not about them, it's because of the human-made actions and that they bring these barriers to the animals' movement, finding food and risking their lives to find food. It's an everyday reality in the northern Greece for the bears to go down to the villages and search in the garbage and go to steal honey from the honeybees. So it's a challenge that all the people in the northern areas they face, and some of them they just don't treat the situation well. It's not about their survival. It's about protecting their fields, their produce, and not their lives actually. And yeah, it's about well-being at the end. It's like humans, we need to be able not to be a barrier for the movement of the wildlife, a barrier for the growth and the well-being of other creatures, and to coexist in harmony. And I would like to say about Hara's presentation about Effie's Skipetari story. I have personally, I reflect on that and I identify because part of me. Personally, I have been as well somebody who immigrated, and I also, while being an immigrant in the Northern Europe, I have also worked as a facilitator, workshop facilitator in storytelling and arts in refugee camps. So the people who we saw arriving in Greece, then I met them in the Netherlands, where I was working in the refugee camps, and I met Hassan. I mean, not exactly these people, but yeah, people who were forced to leave their houses and their countries, their life, and I saw this influx coming to the northern countries, and I saw the next chapter there. So it was a chapter after surviving, and was a chapter of well-being, and I saw the disappointments. They're so skeptical of, okay, now we're here. And is that a life for us? So it's a not ending story of the ones who are forced to go away. They're always strangers. They're always xenos. They're always somebody who doesn't belong. So it's very important, the part of being also in this story of moving people, of moving animals, of searching to create our nest. We need, first of all, to feel welcomed, to be embraced, to be supported, and then we can grow and thrive. This is what I want to share.
And I would like to add about your story, Bear With Me. As I was watching it, I drew parallels with borders, how we got forests and we like cage. It's like a cage animals in specific parts. We do the same things to ourselves. We cage ourselves with lines that some other people drew on our countries, and then we cannot evolve, we cannot move. And I thought how difficult is everything, and how it's all made up. And the same thing we do to nature, we do to ourselves. We've done it millions of years, and we continue to do it, even though we see that it's not working, that we cannot thrive. Bears cannot thrive, and people cannot thrive if they are confined to a place where it doesn't work for them. And it was an important part when you moved from the bears and you said for us. That was an important step for me in your story.
Yes, thank you. It's true. Every person's story has universal and global connection, and it's not because thinking about what you said about the bears and the people who are imprisoned, although they are not. It's about in the case of the bridges of connectivity with bears and their food and their other habitats is because of these infrastructures and these human creations that they make this split. And so we need to find ways and to be alert in reconnecting these parts of ourselves, of what is good for us and what is good for the planet and in everyday life. And this is politics. It's just like what you said, it's political. Decisions are made for people, and it caused, and it still is an issue, a big issue is immigration. And that's for sure, it's a global issue, ongoing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I keep going back to this theme of how we've really constructed this idea, this dichotomy that you talked about, Chitali, at the very beginning. This, it's either us or them, right? And this idea that the thriving and well-being is so interconnected, and it's so clear right now. And particularly looking at the Bear With Me, it's so clear that that we need to think about those interconnections. Otherwise, nobody will thrive, right? Especially in this era of precipitous climate change. What, Mbalo, did you want to add anything to the conversation?
Mm-hmm. I first, I really, really appreciated like the diversity of stories, but still how it seemed like there were so many parallels. What really resonated with me at the beginning, Chaitali, with your story is the question of like, if what's going to happen is already going to happen, then what is our role what is our role with practicing agency? And I really felt like with Chara at the end of your story, when you spoke about the capacity to care and to remember, and to connect, I feel like it sort of answered that question for me at the beginning. It's like that's where our choice comes in. It's if a moment in time offers us an opportunity to care, whether it is for bears or for refugees, then that is, at least for me, it seems like that's the beauty of life, even if the outcome is always the same. So thank you all for just sharing these stories and also leaving me with very important questions at the end. I really feel like these are questions that I love to reflect on. So thank you.
Thank you for your feedback.
Do we have any questions from our audience members? If you'd like to unmute and ask your question or just put it in the chat. While they're thinking, one of the questions that I was really thinking about during all of your stories is, as you finish these particular chapters, we're never done with storytelling, right? It's an ongoing, iterative sort of process. And even when we make our digital stories, right, we're still thinking after we close the credits. What makes you after doing these projects, what makes you optimistic and hopeful about going forward?
If I may say, in the story about the bears, until the beginning of the 90s, there were phenomena in Balkans and still maybe rare still, but in Greece as well, where there were bears captured and they were tortured, and there were also the phenomenon of bear dancer. So since then, a lot has changed, and at least in Greece, there's not such phenomena anymore. This is a great step. And another step is also because of people. Sometimes these orphan bears is a big issue. When the mother is gone, because they're in their life, bears, they stay with their mother for a lot of years before growing up and creating their nest alone. Until that moment, if they lose their mother, they are not able to know how to create their nest. This is something their mother learns them, teaches them. So these little bears are very often go to they're very trying to find food. They're going close to people, and they're captured by the people. And the people, they play with them because they're cute. And one day, these little bears, they are not cute anymore. I mean, they are, but they are so strong. And these people, they're afraid. And then what's happening then? Through the work of Arcturus, and through educational workshops, and through promoting these alternative methods of facing these kind of situations and challenges, people, they start to react differently through these cases. So this is something that gives me hope. The same happens also with the wolves in Greece, because Arcturus has also wolves, protecting wolves, because a lot of people, they find wolves and they think, oh, I don't want a dog, I will get a wolf instead. And then the same story happens. One day they realize that this is not a dog, it's a wolf. It has wild instincts. And nowadays, more and more people, they know that this is not the way they should treat these animals, and they do other actions instead of having them as pets, let's say. So this gives me hope. And in any case, raising awareness through digital storytelling, and sharing the personal and connecting it to the global, it's a step forward. Every time is a step forward. Even one person sees this work and touches, get a glimpse of what reality is, that the bears are not eating meat, they're eating apples. They love apples. I have fed it in Arcturus tons of apples to the bears. So this is even knowing that the bears love apples, maybe this can change their stereotypes of what a bear is. Yeah.
I love
That's
that
what-
in terms of stories interrupting stereotypes, right? Because they're telling the story of that. And I think that gets to what Trisha asked in the chat, how have you used your stories in education or other applications? And I think, Effie, you were just saying that do you show this story in this digital story in workshops?
Personally, I'm collaborating with colleges and private organizations, and I'm teaching digital storytelling and autobiographical storytelling. For me, the one is within the other, and it's very important. And this is how I work, and this is how I want to stimulate the world to self-express and to see other ways. Each story has more multiple ways to be seen. And also refer to what you have said earlier, is that no, the co-host, I don't remember her name, Balu. It's a good story. It makes you think it makes you question. So my aim is to make people question, and then this is a great start for social change. And then, yeah.
And I hope because I love what you're saying with the questions. And when I teach, and my students ask me something, I always try to answer back with more questions and not give them the answer. And that's what I liked about Effie's Skepetara story, that she had this big question right in the middle of the story, which she never answered, but she made me think of other questions. And that's maybe what also gives me hope that because I participate in the digital storytelling class in the university, and I have seen the change. I've seen people cry when we watch this story. I've seen people react with my personal stories. If girls coming to talk to me about what's happened, and I think it changes statistics and numbers to personal experiences. To you can actually see the person, and that's what gives me hope. And I see it in myself. Every time I watch this story, I'm in tears. And so first it begins with me. I can see it in myself, and then I see others. So this is really a game changer, that we can practice it and teach others how to do it themselves.
I love that. Thank you.
If I could add, I mean, for me, I think in the big broader context of coloniality, for instance, or anthropocentrism, I don't see as much hope. I think there are like putting plasters on situations that we have, and that's okay. But and for me, it's almost as if we keep telling ourselves that there's hopes that we can feel better about it. But actually, the reality looks really dire. I mean, we've kind of crossed over so many tipping points that it looks really scary at the moment, and then I almost think that talking about hope in this context is sort of delusional, I mean, I don't mean to say that there is no hope and there shouldn't be any hope, but I'm just wondering, in terms of what does that even mean, and for whom is this hope there, and for whom is it not there, and what do we want to do with it, and what kind of change do we want to see, and stuff like that. I think all of that throws up for me as well. But I think for me, essentially, is the system as we have it is not functional. It has to change. And I think it is in that context that I think Indigenous lives, Indigenous stories can become really, really important, because they enable us to think about our relationship with others a little bit differently, and what we need to do a little bit differently, in terms of borders or whatever. But I don't even know if we can imagine life without borders. And for the animals, in some contexts, yes, but for humans, it's definitely such a, with these regimes of fortress Europe or borders, I think it becomes even more, it gets worse every time. But I think I think it's important to want to see new perspectives, kind of unravel them a little bit and see what can lead us to that. But at the same time, I find this idea of hope a little bit scary as well, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's interesting that you raise that question, because there are things that can hide behind hope, right? I just was in a reading group with some colleagues at my university, and we were reading a book about critical hope, which is really thinking about, the way in which hope can be used in the ways that you described, and then how adding this sort of critical lens to it, and how hope operates or is embodied differently in different people, right? And so it has different, it plays out in different ways, but adding this critical edge to it, I think really made the conversation feel different than the one that you were just describing, which is, what's hiding there, and what are we sort of disguising, or how are we keeping that from interrupting some of these things that need to be reimagined, which was really at the end of your presentation as well. And we're ending at 11 o'clock. Is that right, Mbalo? I think that was our ending.
Yes, we have until 11. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So is there anyone else? I would like to extend my thanks. Your stories and your presentations were so compelling, and I really appreciated listening to them. Did you, either one of Hara or Chitali, want to talk about the educational spaces that you teach in as we wrap up? Because I wanted to get back to Trisha's question there.
I do use it as a method in social work class, that talk about storytelling as one of the methods of creating connection, being able to think differently, because otherwise we're so much in this context of we control everything, and we can extract resources, and then we can fix things, and not really thinking about, coming back to thinking about, our epistemology, our ontologies, who can know what, who can be known, and open up questions like that a little bit more. that is how I have used it. And it's been quite interesting for students as well to kind of get it, to understand that these indigenous stories weren't just stories. They were imagining our connections with nature differently. So, it isn't just a story in the same way that our fiction aren't just stories, they represent us in the same way. I think these stories do that. And I think it was also to kind of show how important and why these stories are so important, not just as consuming, fiction or a narrative, but really understanding. That is how I have used it. And I think students have found it quite interesting.
Excellent. Thank you. And in our final minute, Hara, you want to talk a little bit about your teaching context?
Well, I'm a trainee facilitator in the University of Athens for 2 years now. It is the subject, it's digital storytelling. So we use it. Firstly, we don't give a specific theme. It's just a personal story. And then for the next semester, we give them a specific theme, like violence or like a place in Athens. So each student has to come up with a connection with a theme that it wasn't originally theirs. And this is really inspiring and interesting because this story was actually a result of this. We asked them 1922, what does it mean to you? So when you give them a prompt, sometimes students can think of links that they weren't supposed to be there. They didn't know they were there. So that's really interesting about digital storytelling.
Yeah.
Next, I would like to add it in my kindergarten students. I haven't done it yet, but I will try.
Well, thank you so much for all of your contributions, and I look forward to seeing you in some other sessions over the virtual conference.
Thank you for
Thank you
hosting.
so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.